Are you trying to establish your brand as a thought leader? Start a podcast, invite industry experts to be guests on your show, and watch your brand become the prime resource for decision makers in your industry. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Hey everybody, Logan with Sweetfish here. Before we get straight into today's interview, I wanted to let you know about another podcast you might enjoy. If you're a regular listener of this show, you'll probably really like the B2B Revenue Executive Experience with Chad Sanderson over at Value Selling Associates. Chad is a good friend of ours here at Sweetfish, a phenomenal podcast host. I really liked one of his older episodes from probably a year back with Todd Capone, the author of The Transparency Sale. Great conversation about leveraging honesty, transparency, and a value-added approach in B2B sales. Check out the B2B Revenue Executive Experience with Chad Sanderson on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you do your listening. All right, now let's really get into the show. Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. I'm joined today by Colt Briner. He is the CMO over at Ensemble Health Partners. Colt, how you doing today, man?
Doing great, Logan. Thank you for having me on the show. We are surviving in Northern California. So far, so good.
Awesome, man. We're going to be talking about communicating purpose internally and externally. One, the importance of that, and two, how to partner with other functional areas and other functional leaders to do that effectively. Before we do that, I would love for you to give us a little bit of background on yourself and a little bit on what you and your team are up to these days, man.
Right on. And thank you for that. So background for me, I've been in the healthcare financial management space for about 6 years. The role that I've had right here as Chief Marketing Officer flows pretty naturally from the roles that I've held. They've touched on, product management, product marketing, just overall sort of management of an organization, and then finally specifically into the marketing role. As far as what we're doing for Ensemble specifically, just a bit background on Ensemble itself. So the space of interaction between healthcare providers and healthcare payers, like insurance companies and Medicare, Medicaid, has become really complicated. So what we do as an organization is we offload that from the providers so they can focus on providing good healthcare. As far as bringing that message out into the market, obviously that's my main charter. And we do that with sure thought leadership. We also do that with some personality, bringing a little humor into a space that basically hasn't told a joke since maybe 02, 03. And then, really representing the organization as far as our results goes. We've got super, super strong results for our clients, and we rank really well in third-party research. So we're really trying to just reflect that in the marketplace. That's basically my role.
I love it, man. Thank you for sharing your background. You've got some unique experience there from product marketing, overall marketing team leadership, some product management as well, man. And so we're going to be talking about how different functions can work together to communicate purpose internally and externally. I talk to a lot of marketing leaders that are looking at how do we tell a better story externally and not just feature dump on our clients, but the next level deeper than that is, are we telling the same story externally that we are internally, and are we communicating that purpose? So I would love for you to share a little bit about why you're passionate on this topic, the importance of it for marketing leaders, and then we'll get into what are some of those partnerships and how can you manage them effectively?
Great. Well, thank you for kicking that off. It's about my favorite topic to talk about. The importance of purpose, for me, I think is a little hard to overstate. If I think about historically in the space of business, you've had major paradigm shifts, major sea changes, and they've been things as simple and historic as electrification, manufacturing, line production, Then you get into digitization, getting onto Web 1.0, Web 2.0, getting into social media. These sea changes have defined major swaths of winners and losers. The people who got onto e-commerce while those who didn't. I mean, Sears would still be here. Blockbuster, Tower Records, Borders Books, all very well-known examples in our recent history. I genuinely believe that the next major sea change is going to be couched in the space of purpose. Organizations that know how to communicate and lead with purpose are the ones who are going to survive versus those who think that they're just here to make the next widget. They're just here to deliver the next whatever they deliver. And I believe this because the opportunity that's available to people now is so powerful, even as individuals, that anybody can pick up a cell phone and record themselves and put something out on Kickstarter, and boom, they're in business. So if you have even a little passion or a little sense of purpose, and you need a chemical engineer, you can go rent one on Upwork, right? And if you need to get production capacity down the street from a CNC machine, you can rent 30 minutes. Anyone can do anything. So if you're a major organization and you're not giving people an opportunity to align with purpose, you're going to be the next, Tower Records.
Man, so many good examples there of people that, won and especially lost with these major sea changes. It makes me think of, the best sales deck ever, as I believe Andy Raskin put it from Zora, that, you speak about these changes. And it's not just about that we need to, make these up and try and speak to them. As you pointed out, these things are really happening. Just quick side note, another show that we produce called Predicting the Turn with Dave Knox really digs into this episode. So if you like this conversation, guys, definitely check that out. Had to plug him there, is what you're saying there, Colt. Just made me think of it. So let's get into the tactics now of communicating purpose internally and externally. There are really two key partnerships you should look at if you are an organization of size. And that first is your internal comms team. Tell us a little bit about the importance of that and some of the things that you've seen done well to make sure that you're communicating purpose internally and finding a partner with your internal comms leader.
Sure. And I can give you some great examples. So first, why is it important to create a strong partnership between your marketing, which is your outbound, and your internal communications, obviously being your inbound? And I think it comes down to how quickly purpose can devolve to platitude, where you've crafted a beautiful, even poetic, right, purpose statement, and it sounds cool and it makes a great headline. But unless you've internalized it and you're genuinely operating from delivering on that purpose, it becomes transparent. We have developed as consumers, as citizens, as people, great detectors for BS, essentially. And we've now seen it where companies will communicate purpose and we recognize propaganda. So unless you've really operationalized and communicated internally what your purpose is and everybody's on board with that and it's actually happening, it won't be long before it just sort of falls apart. And you can waste a huge amount of effort, right? Your top level leadership can believe in something very strongly. Unless that's genuinely owned by your operational staff, you won't get there. So the importance of that partnership, that's why that's there. That's why that partnership needs to be strong. So tactically, how do you do that? You want to make sure that any individual who has a line or a compartmentalized function understands how that function rolls up into delivering on the company's greater purpose. So for an example, Ensemble's purpose, right, is to offload the burden of revenue cycle management so that providers can focus on providing care. So if you're a biller or a coder or a collector who works inside Ensemble's office, literally 1,000 miles away from the hospital that we're supporting, how do you have any sense of improving the physician's experience, the patient's experience? What I do as a marketer is I'm going to go and I'm actually going to speak to the leadership of that organization and ask them, hey, when Ensemble finds an extra 100 million for you guys, what does that really mean? And I get answers like, well, an MRI machine cost me $3 million. So that helps me there. If I want to provide charity care to an extra 100,000 people this year, well, it costs $10,000 per person per year to do that. So there's that. You start to get concrete, connect the dots, realities coming from the people that you serve, and then take those stories and bring them internally. Then you push even further out. Okay, well, what's the point of having a $3 million MRI? Okay, well, Colt, what happens when I can bring that MRI in, especially the newest one, is I have the ability to achieve early detection on specific disease states. And this year, I'm going to project about 14 lives we're going to save. because we brought in that new MRI. You bring that story back to the person who's just doing the clicky clacky on the keyboard in a cubicle 1,000 miles away, and now they feel like, well, damn, my work means something, right? So you can try as a passionate, believing leader in what you're doing to convince your staff that what you're doing has purpose and meaning, and try to pull an organization that's growing literally like 1,000 new employees per year, and that will exhaust you. But if you can get that line level of an organization to internalize and recognize how what they do leads to, in this case, saving lives, that base of the pyramid will drive your organization forward for you, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that's truly remarkable.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there. There's, you and I have talked a little bit offline about taking B2C examples into B2B marketing. And one that I've noticed, I've talked with other people about, I don't know if it's going on, if it's an ad campaign outside of here in Colorado, but Children's Hospital in Colorado has this great ad spot, and it's kids talking, and they're talking about the very specific things that they need differently. Their hearts beat faster. They need distraction from the needle and all these little things. And as a parent of 2 kids, 10 and under, I'm like, that's true. And kind of the punchline was, we're kids, we're different, and we need a different hospital. And that connection to the purpose, the front line, back to, in this case, why you would choose Children's Hospital. But I think that's a good example of how they're communicating that purpose externally. And then what you're saying is take those stories, make sure that you're communicating them internally the very same way, right?
Yeah, exactly correct. Yeah. And one of the things that happens, especially, if you're a chief marketing officer or somebody else who's holding a leadership role, the dots are already connected in your mind. You know how that works. But especially if you have staff that are brought in at like, $16 an hour, $20 an hour level, don't forget, they haven't been in your space for 20 years, and those dots aren't naturally connected in their minds. The time that you take to educate those folks on how those connections exist is worth it, right? They may be learning really well the specific function they're involved in, but how it fits into the bigger picture is something that you should take the time to educate them on. Create the clear connections in the process that they're involved in and how it ultimately yields to that result. That's so important. And it's not a once in a year thing. You make it part of your daily meeting. You make it part of your quarterly team meetings. You make it part of your biannual town hall company-wide, and just keep driving that message home. If you do that, even if you had to take time away from other agenda items, I just believe so strongly in how ultimately that's going to empower your organization.
Yeah, what I hear you saying there, Colt, are 2 things: that it takes consistency, it takes a commitment over the long haul. And then, as you partner with your internal comms leaders, you're connecting the dots to, okay, what we do affects this, but take it to the nth degree. Take it to this function. Internal comms, here's how you can relate this to our HR team. Here's how you can relate this to our customer success team. So I love what you're advocating for there. And it's a natural progression, right? So I think that that's really good advice for folks. The other area that you and I have talked about, that the other functional department marketers need to get on the same page when it comes to purpose, is definitely recruiters. So can you talk to a little bit about how getting on the same page when it comes to purpose with marketing and recruiting can yield some positive effects, and maybe how to go about it, man?
Yeah, another great point. What we find just statistically in terms of how much better engaged employees are, how much more they commit, how much more they are able to speak to your organization as something that they're proud of, how they become advocates for you. All these things are enhanced when organizations are operating from a center of purpose. As far as how to extend that into the space of HR and recruiting, empowering those people when they go to like college campuses or what have you with collateral pieces, videos up on a TV that are bringing the voices of purpose from your organizational leaders, from the leaders of the clients that you support, how the work that you do is ultimately leading into the community. That's very powerful and meaningful to people who are looking for some way to commit the life energy that they're going to exchange with a business into what will ultimately be, compensation, but meaning in their lives.
I love the way that you put that, man. what was that? Exchanging the life energy that they're going to invest. Man, that is just a great way to put what we're really doing when we decide to join an organization, when we decide to stay with an organization. And so, that sense of purpose and getting on the same page with recruiters can definitely yield some good results. Without naming names, throwing anybody under the bus, I think we learn from, good examples, and we also learn from, the pitfalls where it's not done well or things like that. And so you mentioned, as you partner with internal comms, that purpose can turn to platitude. Have you seen a partnership with HR and talent leaders and recruiting leaders go badly, or just any pitfalls you would recommend that folks look out for as they partner with those teams between marketing and the talent teams?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think that there's two things that are going to play into there. It's accountability and empowering voices. So accountability means that if you're going to put purpose at the center of your management agenda, it's what you're delivering on for the clients that you support, for the communities that you are interacting with. Accountability means, if you're, as a member of the organization, as a team within the organization, or whatever component of the structure, if you're not operating on that purpose, if you haven't put it at the core of your management agenda, you're not talking about it every day, you're going, yeah, we do talk about that, but now let's focus on, what's the revenue, right? Go back to the revenue chart. You need to have accountability there to make sure that you continue to drive on purpose. And then empowering voices means it's not getting people the channels to tattletale. It's making sure that everybody understands what are the communication channels that exist in this organization so that we can hear your best ideas, understand where we're failing, talk about how to improve. Every channel that exists all the way up to leadership, so that it's not punitive, so that it's not embarrassing, so that it's not anything but empowered voices throughout your company. Those are the two pieces that I think really, really make it possible to preserve purpose versus platitude.
I love it, man. Well, I didn't even prep you on this final question, but I never let our guests go lately without asking them a question that ties to one of our core values and a purpose that we hold near and dear, and that's never stop learning. So, Colt, I'm going to put you on the spot here, whether it's related to today's topic, marketing, personal or professional development. What's a resource you might want to share with B2B marketing folks that are listening to this that they should have in their wheelhouse, a resource you find yourself going to lately, man?
The TED Radio Hour. I'm a big fan of the TED Radio Hour. I love consuming that content. Lots of great ideas happen there. As a B2B marketer, I take a lot of cues from B2C. Just look at what's coming across in the big players that as brands that have established something that you connect with, right? So if you're a brand and you haven't put some kind of personality out there, it's not going to be easy for people to connect with you, and connection is important these days. So I use just regular advertising, and I'll be honest, I often steal and parody regular advertising. You look at something really successful like Allstate's Mayhem. Yeah. I love that as something that you can parody and work with. I mean, the millions of dollars that they've spent to make that a meme, essentially. Look for memes and leverage them in your own marketing, because people know how to connect with it and they recognize it. And if it makes them laugh or it's interesting, I think you're going to win.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Our random channel on Slack here internally at Sweetfish is just full of all sorts of gifts. I mean, it's how we communicate as a team. And we had this epiphany. Why are we not using that in the way that we engage our community via email? And so now, a lot of our signups for our emails and things like that is like, you want some marketing nuggets and you also want all the gifts. So, man, what you're saying there just totally rings true with what we're experiencing right now. So I love it. Colt, obviously you are an experienced marketer. You're bringing tons of knowledge to listeners today. So anybody listening to this that wants to learn more about what you guys are up to, or just stay connected with you and follow along with you, LinkedIn, otherwise, what's the best way for them to reach out or stay connected, man?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best way to reach me. I don't think there's any more than one Colt Briner out there, so that's how you'll find me on that. ColtBriner.com, also a place where you can check me out. I have a few videos up on YouTube if you want to see some of the talks that I've been doing.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate it. This has been a really fun conversation. Thanks so much for jamming on purpose with me today, man.
Absolutely, Logan. Thank you, man.
Hey everybody, Logan with Sweetfish here. If you're a regular listener of B2B Growth, you know that I'm one of the co-hosts of this show. but you may not know that I also head up the sales team here at Sweetfish. So for those of you in sales or sales ops, I wanted to take a second to share something that's made us insanely more efficient lately. Our team has been using LeadIQ for the past few months, and what used to take us 4 hours gathering contact data now takes us only 1. We're 75% more efficient, we're able to move faster with outbound prospecting, and organizing our campaigns is so much easier than before. I'd highly suggest you guys check out LeadIQ as well. You can check them out at leadiq.com. That's LEADIQ.com.